Welcome. My name is Jane Yu. I am the co founder of UNS Events, and I help engaged couples plan and design their wedding from beginning to end. I love supporting my couples by keeping their stress levels to a minimum and enjoyment to a maximum by providing step by step guidance along their planning journey. If you're here today, you're probably feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the sheer amount of tasks that you have to do, and I totally understand that. Today, we are going to talk about setting the foundation for your wedding planning journey so that you and your partner can be set up for success and enjoy the planning as much as possible. If this is the first time that you're planning a wedding, then you're definitely not alone. Most of the couples that I've worked with and most couples that I speak to, this is definitely their first time planning a wedding, or for many of them, and really any kind of event at this scale. To be honest, even 7 years ago, when I was planning my own wedding, I had already been planning events at that time for 6 years or so, but I was still overwhelmed by everything that we had to do. And it's really different when it's your own wedding day. So, from that experience, I really learned just the different things that I could use to guide my couples better and to really be able to put myself in their shoes and come up with different products and services to be able to do that. So, today we're just going to be talking about setting your mindset and setting the foundation for your wedding planning, even before you pick a venue or pick a date or do any of that, even before you set up a to do list. So, the first thing I think is just like anything else in life, just getting a little bit grounded in the reality of what's to come. And the first thing is really to accept that it is going to be a bit of a stressful process. You are going to feel overwhelmed. There's going to be a lot to do. It's going to take a lot of time. You're going to have a lot of conversations with a lot of different people. You have to make so many different decisions. And it's really going to be an emotional roller coaster. And there's, of course, the financial part of it that comes with it that is a stressor for many people. And so I think if you accept the stress of it, it's definitely going to help you along the planning journey just to know that this is just a part of it. And I think grounding yourself in that is really, really important and to remind yourself of that anytime it gets really, really difficult. The second thing, which I think is very, very important, is to talk to your partner about priorities because opening up this line of communication from the beginning is very, very important because you don't want anyone to resent each other. And you just want to make sure you have all your expectations out on the table, including who's going to be involved in the planning. Is it going to be just one of you? Is it going to be both of you? Is it going to be one of you mostly, and then the other one will be helping? I think understanding the different roles and what's important to each of you is going to be key in maintaining kind of a very uh, your sanity throughout the planning process. Additionally, you want to talk to your families or anyone who is contributing, maybe financially, to the wedding. In some cultures, I know that in Mexican cultures and Filipino cultures, they have a tradition of family members or cousins or godparents contributing to the wedding in different ways, maybe covering attire or someone's covering flowers, etc. You want to be able to talk to all of them and see if they have any expectations. Many times it may be just a gift to you, which is great, but I think it's a nice gesture for you as a receiver of that gift to ask them if they have any expectations or if there's anything that they really want to highlight with the gift that they are giving you for your wedding day. I think just in general, that line of communication is going to be important for your partner, the families, and also eventually when you start to book and manage vendors. And then lastly, you have to remember that planning a wedding is not meant to be done really in a short period of time. Yes, you can do it, but at the same time, there's a reason that most people take 8 to 12 months or more even to plan their wedding. And it's because it can definitely feel like a full time job. I always think, or I always say that it takes around 300 to 500 or more hours, just depending on your level of just comfort in making decisions and the speed at which you're, getting research done and all of that. But for someone who's never done it before, like if you've never even been a part of a wedding party and you've had no exposure to weddings, then it can definitely take you upward of a few hundred hours, which if you break it down into full-time hours at like 40 hours a week, it can be anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks if you're working on it full time. And we all know that most couples, both partners, are likely to have full-time jobs. So imagine adding those hours on top of your work to plan the wedding, and it's almost a more emotionally taxing task to plan your wedding than to go to work. So just thinking of planning your wedding in phases will definitely help. So remember to not put the cart before the horse, or horse before the cart before the or horse before the cart, whatever it is, cart before the horse. And you have to take one step at a time. For instance, you can't book most vendors until you have a date and a venue, right? And so you can start researching, you can look on Instagram or Pinterest to see who you might like, but you don't have to go down the rabbit hole of finding pricing and all of this until you have a date. So that's just one example of following the steps and just remembering that wedding planning is definitely meant to be done in chunks. So don't stress yourself out by thinking that you have to do everything so urgently. So those are sort of my 3 tips for setting the foundation for your wedding planning. And I hope that was helpful, because just remembering these 3 things in mind as you're planning, I think will be very, very helpful. And anytime you're feeling really overwhelmed at any point, you can kind of come back to these 3 ground rules so that you can kind of reset and make sure that you can, wake up the next day and not feeling so stressed out. And so you can tackle those tasks at hand. I hope that was helpful. And I do want to open it up for questions. So let me know if you have any questions. I did anticipate that since this is my first live, there wouldn't be anyone on. And so there are no questions that anyone has asked or is asking. But I did prepare some frequently asked questions that I noticed when talking to couples and potential clients. So I did want to address them. The first one is, how far in advance do I need to plan a wedding? I alluded to this a little bit, but my recommendation is at least 8 months. And if you have 12 months or more to start thinking and to start the process, I really think that's ideal. If you want to take it step by step and day by day and not feel so overwhelmed, I think 12 months is very healthy amount of time to start. In terms of planning in advance. Of course, again, it can be done. I know people who have done it in less, but you will be spending most of your time on the wedding planning, especially if you don't have a planner. We do have a question, and the question is, where should I start if I'm at the very beginning stages of planning? So after you've kind of set the foundation, the next thing you're going to want to do is think about what date, what season you might want to get married. And this could really depend on when you got engaged. But some people really want to get married in the fall. Some people really want to get married in spring or summer. And it really depends where you live too, because I live in Los Angeles and we're kind of year round. We can have weddings outdoor, although the weather is definitely more temperamental these days. But of course, picking the date, figuring out when the range of when you want to get married is going to be the next step after the foundational steps that I kind of talked about. And then another question that people ask that is, what is a realistic budget? How much does a wedding cost? And that's a real loaded question that I don't think I'll be able to answer right now. But to be honest, there's just so many variables in developing a budget, like where you live, where you want to get married, what kind of vibe you want, whether it's a hotel or restaurant or a raw event space. There's just so much questions that go into it. So when I'm developing a budget with the client, there's a lot of not research, but discussion around what kind of style they want as well. So that's kind of a loaded question. And actually, I'm going to be talking about that a little bit more on my next live. So if you want to join, that'll be next Wednesday at the same time. And then the last question that I wanted to address is that some people have asked is, how do you stay organized and on track with everything? And I recommend that you definitely have a centralized place of information, a centralized hub. So, for instance, I use Google Drive to house all of my documents for each client, and they also have access to that. So, even if I'm not doing full planning, let's say I'm just doing coordinating, then they are a lot of times they have a Google Drive that they've already started and different documents. And so having a centralized hub of information that you and your partner can both access, and even family members sometimes can access, is really, really helpful. And so that way you can keep all your folders organized by venue, by vendor, your research, etc. And I find that to be really, really helpful. And that's actually a great segue into my talking about my free wedding planning guide. That's a part of the digital wedding planning product that I'm going to be launching next month in September. And it's essentially a step by step guide broken out into 8 to 12 months phases that you can follow to see what order you need to book vendors in, what tasks you need to tackle in which order. And it'll give you a good preview of what my wedding planner will have. And my wedding planner will have mostly Google Sheets templates and Google Docs templates, but this one will be a downloadable PDF so that you can get a gist of what you might get with the planning product. And if you want to download it, you can go to tinyurl.com/bestweddingguide to download it. And you will also be added to my newsletter, which will give you updates for future lives and also new content and videos that I create about wedding planning. And if you have any questions about your journey, you can always email me at digital@uns.com, YUANDUS.com. And I hope to see you at the next live. Thank you for being here.